Julius Caesar. The name alone conjures images of power, ambition, conquest, and ultimate betrayal. We know him as the brilliant general who crossed the Rubicon, the masterful politician who reshaped the Roman Republic, and the man whose assassination on the Ides of March became one of history's most infamous murders. But behind the triumphs and the legend, Caesar was something else too: super paranoid. His paranoia wasn't just about enemies in the Senate or dangerous rivals on the battlefield. It went right down to the most mundane details of daily life, like getting a haircut. Yes, you read that right. Julius Caesar was so suspicious. Even sitting in a barber's chair made him uneasy. But Caesar didn't just worry. He turned his anxiety into strategy. His personal barber wasn't just there to style his famous balding head. He was trained to be a spy, an ear to the ground, a quiet observer in the middle of Rome's dangerous political games. This is the strange, fascinating story of how Caesar blended style and state secrets, all in one haircut. The root of Caesar's paranoia. To understand why Caesar was so on edge, you have to look at the world he lived in. The late Roman Republic was a brutal, cutthroat place. Politicians weren't just rivals, they were conspirators. Alliances crumbled overnight. Leaders were exiled, assassinated, or executed on the flimsiest of charges. And Caesar? He had made himself the most powerful man in Rome, which also meant the most hated and feared. After conquering Gaul, crossing the Rubicon, and defeating Pompey in a civil war, Caesar declared himself dictator for life, a move that set alarm bells ringing across the Republic. He had enemies everywhere: jealous senators, angry former allies, betrayed generals. Even ordinary citizens worried that Rome was slipping from republic to monarchy. Caesar knew the danger. He was famously careful with his personal security. He employed food tasters. He was always surrounded by bodyguards. And when it came to the people closest to his body, like his doctor, his valet, and yes, his barber, he was hyper-aware. Why fear a haircut? A haircut in ancient Rome wasn't just a quick trim. It was a personal ritual. The barber worked with sharp razors, scissors, and knives, all while standing within striking distance of the most important man in the empire. For someone as high profile and as paranoid as Caesar, this was a nightmare scenario. It wasn't just about the risk of assassination, though that was part of it. The barber was one of the few people allowed near Caesar in private moments. That meant the barber could overhear things, notice tensions, observe moods, or pick up on gossip that others couldn't. In a world where information was power, the barber wasn't just a servant. He was an untapped source of intelligence. The barber's spy Caesar, always the strategist, realized this. Instead of simply fearing his barber, he trained him as a spy. While snipping hair or trimming Caesar's famously thinning scalp, the barber was expected to keep his ears open. He listened for whispers of betrayal, disloyalty, or scandal among the staff. Servants, guards, cooks, and attendants often let their guard down around the barber, assuming he was harmless, just another household figure with no political role. But Caesar knew better. The barber became a silent informant, reporting back on anything suspicious. In effect, the man was running a one-man internal intelligence agency, all while perfecting Caesar's comb-over. Talk about multitasking, style and state secrets at once. The bigger picture: spies everywhere. Caesar's use of his barber as a spy wasn't unique. It was part of his larger system of personal surveillance. He had informants in the Senate, in the army, in the provinces. Letters were opened and read, conversations were monitored, and alliances were carefully mapped. He understood what modern leaders and intelligence agencies know today. Power is about more than weapons. It is about information. And Caesar needed every edge he could get. As his dictatorship became more absolute, conspiracies multiplied. By 44 BCE, whispers of rebellion and assassination were circulating through Rome. The Senate, once a proud ruling body, had become a nest of plots. Even Caesar's closest allies, Brutus, Cassius Decimus, were harboring deadly thoughts. Despite all his precautions, all his informants, and all his Barber spies' quiet reports, the storm was building faster than he realized. The Ides of March. Paranoia meets its limit. On March 15, 44 BCE, the famous Ides of March, Caesar went to the Senate despite warnings. According to legend, his wife Calpurnia begged him to stay home. Omens were bad, the air was tense, and even some of his informants had passed along unsettling news. But Caesar, perhaps thinking himself invincible, went anyway. In the Senate chamber, surrounded by men he considered friends, he was stabbed 23 times. The barber, no matter how sharp his scissors or sharp his ears, couldn't save him. Caesar's network of spies and informants failed to stop the ultimate betrayal, the one that came from the people closest to him. Legacy of a paranoid genius. Julius Caesar's paranoia wasn't baseless. It was the price of power in a world where betrayal was often just a handshake away. In some ways, his use of his barber as a spy shows his genius for seeing opportunity everywhere, even in a simple haircut. But it also shows the limits of paranoia. No matter how carefully Caesar controlled his household, no matter how much information he gathered, the one thing he couldn't fully control was human ambition. His death reshaped Rome forever. The Republic collapsed, civil wars followed, and eventually, his grandnephew Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. So yes, Julius Caesar feared haircuts. But more importantly, he understood the power of small things. In every razor, every whisper, every conversation, there was the possibility of survival or downfall. In training his barber to be a spy, Caesar showed the world that no detail was too small, no moment too casual when it came to holding on to power. It's a reminder that sometimes, history has greatest stories don't just unfold on the battlefield or in the halls of government. Sometimes they happen quietly, in a barber's chair, scissors in hand, with an empire's fate hanging by a hair.